So back in June, we had the release of the next installment of the 28 years we Easter Days franchise. Eyes with 28 years later. To, I remember that this was my first exposure to the franchise, and after watching it, I thought the first film, 28 years later, was good. Good, but not great. There were elements I really liked about it, especially in the second half, but most of the stuff in the first half was quite dull, and the editing, while not terrible, but did make the film kind of hard to watch. Although one thing I did appreciate about this movie that I didn't mention in my review is that it felt welcoming to newcomers of the 28 Days Later franchise. Where someone like me who haven't seen the previous films was able to watch this and understand everything that was going to happen. And now a few months later, literally 22 weeks after the release of the first film, and we got the second installment of this 28 years later franchise, Eyes with the Bone Temple, because the first 28 years later was the start of an all-new trilogy for the franchise. With the third film set to come out at some point. I don't know if we've got a release date planned for that one yet, but at the time I'm recording it in this, I'm just saying at some point. And so I was quite curious to give if this one was. I was hoping that this would at least be on par with the first 20 years later. I didn't. I was not expecting this to become an amazing film that was better than the first 28 years later, but somehow that happened. But yeah, I really had a great time with this film, which is hard to say for a January release. This is a month that should to be slow for movies and pretty much putting dull film and people who wouldn't really be bothered to watch. How did they come? And put this one in the middle of January and release something this is amazing. There is a lot I really liked about this film. One is that it improved one of the first film's biggest problems, and that's the editing. The editing feels a lot more smoother, and I don't feel like there's one cut after another, making it easier for the film for me to watch the film. There might be a few times it does that, but those moments are very far and few between where they did not ruin the experience at all. And while we're on the subject, the visuals look absolutely beautiful. The film looks stunning with all the different locations around. I'm not entirely sure if this was filmed on iPhones like the first, but if it was, it didn't change the fact that the film it looked gorgeous regardless. Also, the horror really got a great boost. I liked it fine in the first one, but man, there were some really scary scenes in this one. And there were some jump scares that really got a fright out of me, and I really appreciated that. They were always so unexpected, and a lot of chills through my spine. Which is something every good horror movie should go for. I also think the story is a lot more interesting. For the first half, it does split between Dr. Coulson's story of how he cured all an infected with Samson. And despite Ike finding himself in Jimmy Crystal's gap, and as he tries to find a way to escape from it, but the two storylines feel like they work really well together in the first half and come together in the second half in a way that was really well done. And brought the film together full circle. Cool. Cool. Oh, I also really liked the characters, because Dr. Kelson was a lot more interesting in this than he was in the first film. Oh, and rather, as before, I find this before almost was a lot stronger here. Yeah, I also think Spike got a great boost in this one, as he found himself in Jimmy's gang, and there's a part here that feels really uncomfortable, or which makes the audience care for him. You can tell he's in a situation that he can't easily get himself out of, and you feel quite bad for Spike. Like, you really want him to get out of this situation. But then there is the villain of the feature, Jimmy Crystal. First of all, if I had a nickel for every movie scene equal this decade that had a villain named Jimmy Crystal, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right? Second of all, the year's only just begun, and they've already given us one of the best villains of the decade. Seriously, this is a fantastic villain. He's an imposing threat and adds a lot more to why Spike's situation is a lot more uncomfortable and harder than it was in the first. As for and the fact that he views himself as a son of Satan himself, makes him a lot more compelling and interesting with his character. Not to mention that Jacob O'Connor kills it with the performance. He does a fantastic job of making this character terrifying and menacing, in the best way possible. I guess the only real problems I have with this feature is that I feel like Jimmy's gang went underused, with the exception of one girl that later to become threat, ends with Spike and tries to protect him, while also being the one who's against Jimmy the most. The rest of the gang of his gang and don't really have much going for them. And the only part of them that's noticeable is how they all share the name Jimmy. They're not bad or anything, but I do feel like we could have learned a lot more about who they are. Especially when some of them don't last very long, and do end up getting killed during the feature. Also, I'm kind of mixed on the ending thing. I honestly like the idea of it, but Anne does a really good job of setting up the third 28 years later film. But I do feel like what they could have kept the idea they were doing. They could have presented it in a slightly different angle. Where I could have been fully more invested, but those are just really minor critiques. Other than that, 28 years later, The Bone Temple is a fantastic improvement over the first 28 years later. Well, it does have a few ways to side characters and to and a mixed bag of an ending. It more than makes up for it with a highly engaging story. Or we really visual or strong main character to incredible voice acting and incredible acting and some terrifying horror. Right. If you're a fan of the first 28 years later, or a fan of the other 28 28 days later or 28 weeks later, then you're going to have a fantastic time with this. It will leave you on the edge of your seat. Either you'll be invested with everything that's going on. I can't believe I'm saying this about a January release. But this has potential to end up as a top 10 and for this year. Yeah, and that's why I'm gonna give this film a 9.5 out of 10. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Feel free to comment, like, and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye!